My name is Sam Gatsby Lim, and I made a piece called Other for Freefall. The piece was inspired by, I suppose, a meditation on my journey as an artist. There was a lot of media attention at the time surrounding the issues of immigration, boat people, and Nauru and the offshore detention centres. And I wanted to make a piece which was about my personal journey as an artist and as a citizen. And so I drew back on a lot of my memories, my childhood, and the pieces that sort of came together were very much drawn from my personal experience. The paper was a material that I worked with because when we first arrived as immigrants from Cambodia, we didn't have all that much money. And so, unlike other kids who had toys, we didn't really have any of that. So my dad taught me to make these paper cranes, these paper boats. And so for us, we didn't really know that we were poor. We just thought that everyone played with paper. And so I started with sort of delving back into that past and looking at what it was that brought our family here, which was searching for a better life, more opportunity, and what it is that we take for granted. And in looking back at all of that, I kind of realized that, you know, a lot of what we had there was charity. And so I sort of really had a long, hard think about what it meant to be an immigrant, what it meant to be someone seeking asylum, and using the materials of paper. I was born in Cambodia in 1980, in the middle of the Pol Pot regime. I was born into a country in turmoil. There was a racial genocide, and my father was working on a farm with my young brother just born, subsisting on very little, a handful of rice, working in a rice field, and fearing for his life and knowing that if he continued, he wouldn't live. There was a lot that happened that I can barely remember that I was told later on by my parents. Sort of hiding in rice fields, buried in mud, breathing through reeds. My brother and I crying, and my dad giving us sort of sugarcane candy to keep us from screaming so that we wouldn't be discovered. And I really did sort of think and meditate on that journey that they took in order to find a better life for us. And so I use the symbolism of 8, which is a very sort of powerful numerology in Chinese astrology. So I made 8 boats, 8 paper cranes, and 8 paper dragons, because in Chinese numerology, 8 is a symbol for happiness. Double 8 is double happiness, and triple 8 is, of course, it's like the great Chinese dream, to have a healthy family, prosperity in your professional life, and do well in your business. And so for me, it was about presenting the journey that a lot of immigrants take to find this happiness, especially since they do come from a place of war. For me, making a piece with nothing, which was recycled paper, was important because I wanted to remind and invite the viewer to remember that a lot of people have very little, nothing at all. And so instead of making a piece which was very vocal and preachy, I wanted to make something that was a bit more considered, that would draw people in and invite them to just watch. And that was me in a loincloth and a hat, folding paper boats. And the idea of occupying a space with very little, to me, was a way of presenting something that was very non-threatening, making origami birds, dragons, and boats, but actually presenting something which is far more personal and complex to me, which is that as an artist, I think sometimes we, and as an Australian, we take things for granted. And I wanted to make a work which would invite people to view me as Chinese, to view me as someone who was folding paper boats and sitting in a paper boat, and how loaded that image could be. I come from a background of physical theatre and contemporary dance and acting. And so for me, presenting something which is a very contained art form and a very serene, tranquil one, I decided to extend that to a larger scale because I really wanted to sort of engage physically in the work and actually become a smaller part of it, and for the pieces themselves and the actions to be part of what people view. I wanted to create a bit of tension between what is he making next, what is he making, and also to have that jarring of me as a small thing within a larger constructive of things unfolding. For me, being in that space and essentially making something out of nothing, making these boats, making these creatures, I think it was a way of presenting how a great many people make this journey to Australia and to many other countries. They start with nothing and they make something out of nothing. And I invite people to look at that and to see and to choose whatever it is that they want to see, which is that it's a brave thing to do. And for me to occupy the space with boats was a way of inviting that loaded image of boat people to invite people to question themselves. What is it that we're afraid of? For people to come here with nothing and to make something. As someone who was a child of war, who grew up with nothing, and whose parents have gone through more than anyone should ever experience, I know firsthand that children who grow up in those sorts of environments often have strange upbringings. We hoarded food. We finished every meal, no matter how many days it sat in the fridge. I think there are these sort of other repercussions and ripples of war that aren't always acknowledged. And at the moment there's a great vilification towards those who are Muslim in particular, and a lack of understanding of those cultures and a belief that these people, for whatever reason, do not deserve asylum. But the reality is that we do have to look at these as individual cases and really look at the merits. My belief is that everyone should be able to live wherever they like, and that in an ideal world we wouldn't really have war. But as it is, there are so many families, children, men and women who come from places of intolerance, who live in environments which are unsafe, who are living in the middle of wars, oftentimes migrating for sometimes years in order to find a home. For me, it was important to make a piece which was a personal journey and presenting the fact that we're all of us naked, born into this world, and that we have the opportunity to make something out of nothing, which is a right that all of us deserve, wherever it is that we choose to find a home in a safe place.